Hey, I live with my foster family who adopted me when I was 5, and though I'm grateful, I don't know if I would say I'm happy. My life at the orphanage started when I was a tiny little baby. I have no recollection of my biological parents. One time I asked the head patron of our orphanage if she remembered anything about my biological parents. The day I was brought to the orphanage or even dropped off, she smiled and told me not to worry about all that. Ironically, that was all I could do, worry. When I turned 5 years of age, my foster parents came to the orphanage. I was lucky, as Brad puts it, to be picked. The reason why they had decided to adopt me was because my foster mother had lost a series of pregnancies, and they decided to go for adoption since their religious circle frowned upon surrogacy. Brad is my foster brother who is 5 years ahead of me. He did not show up at the orphanages with his parents, but I could remember them assuring me that he was eager to meet me, as he'd always wanted a brother. I guess they may have overestimated Brad's zeal to have a brother, because from the first day I got to the house, he made it crystal clear that I was an intruder. Oh, that day would forever be in my head. He was in the drawing room watching TV when we walked in. Our parents excitedly began to make introductions, and Brad just looked at me disapproving. There was an outburst the moment our mother said that I was his brother. Brad refused to accept what she had said, and he stormed off to his room. Our parents just assured me that I should give him some time and he would learn to love me. I was bitter about the whole thing, but I decided to love Brad despite his bitterness towards me. But he just made it so difficult. He never let me come home around him. He kept his distance from me at home and in school, and it never mattered what I did. I was never right in his eyes, and he always frowned in my direction. He practically loathed me, but I think that's too strong of a word. I continued to do my best to be a good kid over the years while trying to win my foster brother's love. I did most of the chores and usually came out top in my class, and this was something our parents never failed to praise me for. But the more they expressed their joy at my performance, the angrier Brad got at me. It was like he saw me as a competition. Our parents were not blind to all of this, and they on several occasions had spoken to Brad or even rebuked him to learn to start loving me because I was part of the family, and nothing was going to change that, but all they would say, it would just fall on deaf ears. In fact, it amplified his hatred for me. This drama, or hatred, continued all through the years, but I always ignored Brad's drama just for peace to reign. Not until 2 years ago when I stumbled upon a text conversation between Brad and a girl. I had seen them once or twice sneaking around the house, especially when our parents were not home. I did not report the sneaky visits because I was trying to avoid any drama at home, but this time I knew I had to. I had listened to his phone play music, which I found interesting, but I knew that I would only get in trouble if I asked him to send it to me, so I just waited till he was distracted by something else. I picked up his phone and saw the disturbing conversation. The girl was telling Brad that she was scared to undergo a termination. It was, if she was scared to undergo a termination, then it meant that she was pregnant. I knew I had to say something because it was a matter of life and death. I did not do it with malicious intent. Instead, I reported it because I was concerned. I brought my findings to our parents, and they invited him to the study and questioned him. He blatantly denied everything, and they showed their disappointment, and were even upset that Brad was living a life different from what they've been grooming him with all this while. He glared at me when he walked past as he left the study, and I knew his hatred for me just went up a notch. After that, I avoided Brad like a plague. I didn't want him to harm me in any way because I knew that the singular act of picking up his phone was something he was not going to forgive in a hurry. I'm sure if not for the fact that our parents were there, he would have given me a good beating. Some months later, he went off to college. It was easier for me to breathe after he had left. I was happy I did not have to deal with his hateful gaze. My parents were very impressed with me and all I was doing, and for 2 years, I brought them nothing but joy. It was the ideal child being obedient, doing chores, staying out of trouble, and I always went to church with him. Sometimes I reminded myself that this would not last for long because Brad would be returning home at some point. Just like I expected, Brad recently returned home after 2 years, and he returned with a surprise. A child. When our parents asked, he told them that the 2-year-old boy was his son, and the house was on fire that night. Our parents had disappointment written on both of their faces, and I'm sure that my father remembered the termination incident that I had brought to his notice 2 years ago, which he just easily dismissed. Oh boy, here we go. My father gathered us inside of his study, and that evening, my mother looked upset, but not as upset as him, and his face was obviously visibly red from all the anger that he was trying to suppress. I knew then that this was going to be very, very chaotic. The tension in the room was so much I was actually scared to breathe. Brad finally walked in on my father calmly and told him to speak the truth and only the truth. Surprisingly, Brad went ahead and complied. He told us how the mother of the child abandoned him to cater for the little boy alone, and that last year had been unbearable, which is why he opted to return home. My father, though disappointed by the out-of-wedlock child, commended him for being able to juggle school activities and a baby, but Brad was quick to inform him that he had dropped out of school in his second year. My father, he went so cold. This angered my parents a great deal, but my father, he wasn't taking it. Not easy at all. He let Brad know that he was a major disappointment to the family. We all could not believe that Brad had been shamelessly lying to all of us. My mother took this news calmly, but my father reprimanded Brad sternly. He told him to get ready to work hard because he would not lend him any financial assistance. He told him there was a deadline for him to either find a job to cater for himself and his child or move out of his house completely. I tried to plead on his behalf. I did. I even offered to take care of Brad's son while he went job hunting, but my father refused it. He said since he was man enough to get a girl pregnant, then he was man enough to take care of his child alone. Though I did go ahead and sympathize with Brad, I still kept my distance because it's not new knowledge that he does not like me one bit. That same week, Brad returned home, and my father mounted so much pressure on him that he was forced to go out and look for a job. Brad would sneak out of the house without his son, but once my father found out, he scolded him and asked that he take his son with him. People began to notice and question Brad about the little boy that was always with him, and he replied that the little boy was his adopted brother, whom our parents had decided to adopt since I had disappointed them by turning gay. I confronted Brad that moment I learned about the lies he was spreading. I demanded to know why he was staining my image, but he did not give an answer or an apology. He rather hurled insults at me, and I rushed at him, and a fight broke out. He easily pinned me on the floor and was dishing out blows to me when our mother showed up and broke us up. She asked what the issue was, and Brad simply said that I had disrespected him. I immediately denied it and explained to our mother all that happened. I expected her to, her judgment to be fair, but surprised me by saying that I had no right to disrespect Brad. She pointed out that ever since I came into the family, she had never seen me talk with a girl, subtly implying that maybe it's true what he's saying. I was flabbergasted. She went ahead to tell me to stop being a nuisance to Brad and his young boy. I walked away while pondering on what had just happened. Well, I'm currently in physical and emotional pain, especially because of the way my foster mother had sided with Brad over the matter, and I've been thinking about taking the issue to my father, though my mother warned that she did not want me disturbing the peace of the house over what she regarded as a trivial matter. Do you think that's the best way to navigate the issue? What would you do if you found yourself in my shoes? Update number 1. It's been a week. A week since I decided against telling my father about the disagreement between Brad and me. I just decided to let it slide, to not escalate the entire situation at home. I decided to bear it alone like I've been doing and continued to mind my business. I went about doing my thing while making sure that my path did not cross with Brad's. I wanted no form of trouble with him, and it was going pretty well until 2 days ago when I walked into the grocery store to pick up some items. From the corner of my eyes, I noticed people pointing in my direction and, going wild. I turned around at the same moment when a plate of pie landed on my face, blinding me for a moment. I stumbled backwards into the shelf of toiletries while struggling to gain my balance. A member of our church pushed me down and hissed at me and called me a sinner. The group, which consisted of people from the church, laughed loudly while they walked away chanting, "Sinner, sinner," and left me in a sorry state. I was so embarrassed I abandoned my shopping cart and made my way home crying profusely. People turned to stare, and I felt like jumping into a ditch. I already knew this happened as a result of the rumors Brad had been spreading. When I got home, I was too disheartened to do anything. I sat under the shower and kept on crying. So later that evening, I took the issue to my father when he returned from the office. I told him everything that went down at the grocery store earlier, how Brad started the rumor and somehow a member of our church had believed the lie. My mother was there and channeled her energy into downplaying the entire situation. She made it seem like it wasn't that much of a big deal. My father called out to Brad to hear his side of the story, and he kept denying the fact that the reason he started spreading the rumor about me was so that he could hide the shame of being ridiculed for dropping out of college and getting a child too. My father was not happy about this situation, and he went on to scold Brad. He rebuked him seriously and wanted him to stop spreading all these false rumors, and to make sure something like this does not repeat itself in the future. My father told Brad to get ready to share with the congregation that approaching Sunday that he was the father of the little boy. Brad stormed out of the room, and my mother threw a distasteful look in my direction. It made me wonder why exactly she would want to punish me for a mistake that was made by Brad. I pondered deeply why she would defend him when it was clear that he did something wrong. I didn't wonder for long because the answer came to me yesterday when I overheard them talking and I listened. Our mother was telling Brad that she had tried her best to persuade our father to adopt Brad, thereby stopping him from going ahead with the plan of making Brad admit to being the father of the little boy in front of the entire congregation, of which would save him the embarrassment. She said all her tricks, all her persuasions and threats had fallen on deaf ears. She advised Brad to man up and get ready to face whatever embarrassment was coming his way. Brad was not having any of it. He told her to try harder or else he would reveal the secret of her one-time adultery, and then she would also be embarrassed. I heard our mother pleading, but all Brad was interested in was to make sure his son was adopted by our dad. Our mother promised to keep trying to change our father's mind concerning the issue. This discovery was strange, and I had a tough time sleeping that night. I'm currently battling within myself. Should I tell our father what I had just learned, or should I let it play out without being a catalyst? I'll keep asking myself these questions until I make a decision. Update number 2. Hey guys, so it's me, and yes, I am here for an update. This update is coming to you a little over 2 weeks since my last update, and things are just as chaotic. Dare I even say more chaotic. I decided to tell my father everything, and I overheard that fateful night. I made sure to retell it exactly as I had heard it. I did not exaggerate anything, nor did I water down anything. My father calmly asked if I was sure. I was telling him, and I answered in the affirmative. He thanked me, but did not, confront his wife until after a week. We were having dinner as he started by asking her if there was anything she would like to come clean about. She was confused and told him no. She did not know which angle he was coming from, but he did not mind her and asked the question again. I was perched on the stairs, away from her line of sight, but close enough to observe what's going on in the kitchen. My father asked his wife the question one more time, but just like before, she had no idea what he wanted her to say. She asked him to speak plainly and stop beating around the bush. He started retelling what he had heard from me, but could not finish because suddenly I saw him clutch his chest right before he fell to the floor. I was confused. Did she hit him? What happened? I panicked and rushed downstairs, and my mother and I stood side by side staring at my father with no clue as to what was happening. We were confused and did not understand what's going on until we heard him groan in pain. Oh boy. I sprang into action and grabbed my father from the floor, carrying him as gently as I could to the car while asking my mother to get the keys. I drove him straight to the ER. Brad arrived at the hospital minutes later, and turns out my mother had called him. He rushed in, demanding to know what happened, and immediately the doctor walked in to let us know. Our father had suffered a heart attack. He noted that it was very serious, and that there was a very slim chance that my father would make it out alive. He walked away, asking us to be as strong as possible, because our father would need our collective support. Now, more than ever. I turned around to meet the glaring stares from my mother and Brad. They began pointing these fingers at me, accusing me of being an absolute homewrecker. Brad said that he would make sure I regret ever stepping my lanky legs into their home and ruining all the plans that he had been making. He asked why I did not take the hint and just left on my own. I thought he had finished, but I was wrong. Our mother then took over. Oh boy, She asked why I was so nosy and said if I had just kept quiet about the saga of adultery, her husband would not be in the hospital. She said that she would not hesitate to bring me down and even promised that since I was so eager to see her husband dead, she would make sure that I don't get a dime from his inheritance. Not cash, not royalties, and not even a property. She clearly stated that she regrets being a party to my adoption and said Brad's son would have been a better option for adoption. She noted how she wished her husband had listened to her suggestion of adopting Brad's son. She heaped all her problems that we were facing as a family on my head. I was more than devastated. The feeling was worse than the incident at the grocery store. It was painful because I loved these people as they were part of my family. I could not believe that I was hearing all these hateful words from people I've shown nothing but love to. Well, guys, I left the hospital and I promised myself not to shed a tear in front of Brad or our mother. I would not give them that satisfaction, and I also needed to be strong for my father who was battling for his life in intensive care. I walked home blinded by tears, and I suppressed the feelings to cause them pain because I would just be falling into their trap. I'm going to bed with streaks of tears on my face and a realization that my mother and Brad are bent on making things difficult for me. I feel helpless and don't know what to do anymore. So if you guys, have any advice, I would really appreciate it. Update number 3. Hey guys, it's been a week and I went home and cried myself to sleep because Brad and our other mother, decided to heap all the blame on me, huh? When they came home, they barely glanced in my direction and was not even disturbed. I was fine with it. I even expected that kind of treatment, We lived like enemies for a while, with sudden outbursts here and there, or intense name-calling and shaming. I was actually scared that they would wake up one morning to throw my things outside because my father was not home, but they did not until they received a call from the hospital asking us to get there as soon as possible. I was highly apprehensive, and we all somehow feared that the worst had happened. But once we reached the hospital, all of us were surprised with my father sitting on the bed, looking perfectly fine and his lawyer standing next to him. Oh boy, we were all wondering what we would need a lawyer for. Then my father asked the man to go ahead and serve the divorce papers to my mother. Wait, what? We were all confused. He started saying the heart attack fiasco was a prank. According to my dad, he did not immediately confront my mother the moment I had revealed the truth to him because he wanted to find out for himself, and that was what he was doing for the next week. He went through her phone and did some more sort of digging, and he used the prank to leave the house without being questioned. And the reason why he wanted to leave was so he could think about his next line of action, after finding out that his wife had cheated on him. The lawyer butted in and said that they all had the evidence that they needed. My father looked at my mother and told her that she should be ashamed of herself for several things, but most especially for hating on the child she agreed to adopt and bring into her home. She just scoffed at him, snatched the divorce papers from the lawyer's outstretched arms, turned around, banged the door on her way out, and left at no unknown location. Her reaction was surprising, and I wondered what she was thinking when I remembered that she had mentioned inheritance and my father's property. So I put 2 and 2 together and reasoned that she might not mind being a divorced woman so as long as she gets a payment for it. Our father offered to drive us back home, but he did not acknowledge Brad. It was like he was not present in the room with us. Neither was he in the car with us, and we got home and our mother was nowhere to be seen. Our father did not even behave like someone was missing. Finally, Brad summoned the courage to talk to our father. He told him that the reason why he could not say anything about the adultery committed by our mother to him was because he did not want to hurt his feelings. He continued by saying our father's feelings were so important to him that he decided to keep quiet about the entire issue so peace would reign. My father looked at him, and there was this mischievous smile on the corner of his lips that looked like he did not believe a word of whatever Brad was saying. But still, he told Brad to relax. He told him he understood, and Brad heaved a sigh of relief. We had dinner together, and I kept wondering where our mother must have gone. Brad did not look like he knew her location either, but even if he did, I'm sure that he would not say anything because they're both allies, We went to bed, and somehow we were all looking forward to the divorce hearing. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's me. It's been 3 months since the last update, and we have not heard from my mother all this while. But Brad had been saying the same thing, but I had just had this feeling that they may have been in connection, trying to outsmart my father in some sort of way. I wasn't sure, but I could bet my money on it. Ever since my father came back from the hospital, we have lived in peace. Brad respected him a great deal and did not trouble me at all. He did not pick on me, rather he would involve me in simple activities like chores or even playing with his son, especially when our father was around the house. It seemed hypocritical a bit, but I didn't really mind it. I was grateful that we finally had a semblance of siblings love, even if I knew it was out of pretense. It was the closest I had ever felt to Brad. Sometimes it was so good that I forgot that not-so-distant past when Brad was out to get me, chase me out of the house, and even spoil my image. I knew my father understood the game Brad was playing, and he was just observing it, and it was obvious that Brad was trying to get back into our father's good grace. So the court date approached, and we all trooped ourselves to court. Myself, our father, Brad, and his little son, all going to court. We arrived and walked straight to meet my father's lawyer, who was waiting for us. He ushered us into the courtroom, and there was our mother sitting right there. I was almost lost in the thought as I wondered if this woman I was looking at ever loved her husband. I brought my attention back to the court just as the presiding judge granted the divorce. He went on to let my mother know that she received absolutely nothing in the settlement because my father currently had nothing in his name. My mother's lawyer contested that and asked for reasons, and that was when we were informed that while my father was away from the home for a week, he had used all the opportunity to will the whole of his properties to me. This was a good move on his part because it meant that even if he divorced his wife, she was not going to get a dime of alimony or child support because Brad and I were above 18 years of age. My father had been, before ruling, revealed to the court that from the moment I disclosed what I had overheard that night, he had been trying to make the right decision. He studied everyone in the house and understood that neither Brad nor his wife was true to their words. He produced the evidence which he had gathered of his wife cheating on him. It was game over for my mom. She tried to create a scene, but the court clerk asked her to calm down and listen to the remaining part of the judgment. The judge continued and named as the sole heir of every property owned by my father. I could see Brad waiting for his name to be called, but hey, it never was. Did he forget that he made life miserable for me at home and brought disgrace to our father's name? Well, that was the end of the court session, and we all filed out. My mother kept shouting and calling my father a trickster. She said I was manipulating him, which led me being named sole heir. She wept bitterly, but my father paid her no heed. Instead, he turned around and told Brad not to bother returning to his house because as of that instant, he's disowned. That was actually a lot to take in. Brad ran to his mother for support, but she pushed him away and made him realize that she was also in need of help and would not be able to cater for herself, Brad, and his child. My father, he did not even glance in their direction as he walked away and asked me to get in the car. We pulled out of the driveway, and I turned around just in time to see our mother walk away, leaving Brad standing stranded with his little son. I think both Brad and my mother got what they deserve for plotting against their own family. Well, anyways, guys, that's it from my side. Thank you so much for all the support. Goodbye.